joining me for my work week forecast here. This is your work week forecast for January 11th through January 15th. Again, weather pattern is quite quiet for us here in the Northeast in Southern Vermont. We are looking at basically a repeat in many ways of last week in terms of temperatures basically seasonable to slightly above average, certainly no real cold air and no real big storms. The next chance at a storm, which doesn't look big and there's a lot of questions about it still, would be not until the weekend, probably Saturday after the week's over. So your work week forecast looks relatively calm. Really no chances for precipitation aside from maybe a few flurries today. So let's take a quick look at what's going on. We can see how quiet it is out there across a lot of North America as we've got, here's your satellite view. We've just got a few pockets, but nothing really going on. There is one storm in the southeast, which we'll look at, which under some circumstances, if the storm track was right, you'd see where the precipitation is forming down here across the southeast and say, ooh, we could get that storm to make a run at us, but it's going to go well out to sea. The pattern is such that things are kind of sliding off the coast and not really developing until we get way east of us here in the United States. We do have a huge storm and a series of storm systems continuing to try to push onshore and break the pattern down. I do think this week will be the end of this pattern that we've been in here, and we'll start to redevelop a new pattern, which may be a little more snowy. It doesn't necessarily look super active, but we'll have to see what happens as we head towards next week. But this week, pretty quiet. Here's our radar. You can see there's a pretty strong storm, actually quite a bit of snow on the northern side of this storm for the southeast. Pretty good snowmaker, especially over Texas yesterday, and we'll be over some kind of northern or some of those portions of the southeast that often don't see that much snow, but there are a few flurries kind of associated with a trough or kind of a front that's coming through the northern stream energy with this. We may see a few flurries, particularly western facing slopes. May get a little bit of lake enhancement that will then, and some upslope enhancement that will allow for some flurries to fall, but nothing that will be anything even to coat the ground, just maybe a few flurries in the air, and it would be very minor today. So why is the weather pattern like it is? Well, here is temperatures at 850 millibars, which is, like I said, kind of the lower level of the atmosphere. And you can see that there's no temperature gradient really. And that's what's more important here than about what these actual temperatures are. There is almost no temperature gradient from northern Canada to Texas. And if there's no temperature gradient, that really keeps strong storms from forming. The only place we have somewhat of a temperature gradient is there's always warm air over the Gulf because there's just warm water there, especially in the winter at least. And so there is a bit of a clash there. That's why our storm is going to form there. But then you can kind of see where is the temperature difference here. It's it's kind of way off here. This is kind of the difference on the southern jet stream, and the northern jet stream, what's there of it is locked way up over basically almost the North Pole. So we are, because of that, there's no cold air to tap, nothing to generate mid-latitude storms, and no way for us to really get into a significant storm. Also, no way for us to get super cold air. There's really, like I said, no cold air over Canada at the moment. Now, that'll probably change throughout the winter, but when we get into a pattern like this where there's no real cold air to tap, we can really quiet down. Usually, we're very active this time of year, or we're very cold. We're in kind of an odd pattern here where we're not that cold, but we're also not that active in a weather pattern, which is kind of an odd January pattern, but, that's the weather is odd sometimes. Just to kind of show you this on this is not the best data ever, but this is kind of a guesstimation by the models of what surface temperatures are, and you can see that there's no, these 30, 40 below zero temperatures that the model thinks are there. They're all over Siberia, and this is pretty normal. Usually, either it's very cold in Siberia. It's almost always very cold in Siberia, or it's but sometimes pieces of that trickle down into Canada, and that's obviously where we get those big temperature differences. Right now, that's all locked over northern Siberia, and so we don't really have any of that big temperature contrast to tap into, and so at the moment we are not really seeing much in the way of significant storms. So what does that look like in terms of the week-long forecast? Basically, today's the only day with any chance of even some flurries. We will be mostly cloudy. Lows will be, it's chilly out there this morning in the low teens. We'll be near 30. Most days will be basically near 30. We warm up a little bit towards the end of the week. We'll be in the mid-30s. Overnight lows are looking to be around 20, and then upper 20s later in the week. Good ski day all week. If you get a chance to get out and ski this week, it's a nice, pleasant days to ski. Most sun will happen on, I think Thursday will be our sunniest day, but I think we'll basically have pretty good chance of sun on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, our storm that's going to come through over the weekend starts to approach us, and so it becomes more cloudy throughout the afternoon, but still a nice day generally for outdoor activities by winter standards. I will have, I'm sure you've heard, or if you're into all the intricacies of what's going on with the weather, you may have heard some stuff about the polar vortex and sudden stratospheric warming. I'm going to try to put together a video that explains a little bit about what that means this week, because it's one of those things that often gets lots of articles written about it. It's really not as big a deal. I think the communication on the weather front there is often a bigger deal than it really is, but I thought I'd put together a video that kind of describes what it is and why. You probably saw lots of articles last week saying, ooh, there was sudden stratospheric warming. That usually means the polar vortex becomes a thing, which means we could have huge amounts of snow in New England. Well, it does mean that it could lead to a snowy pattern, but it's probably several weeks out, sometimes as many as 5 or 6 weeks from the start of that to when we would actually see it, and that only depends on where the polar vortex sets up. So anyways, I'll probably put a video out on that this week just to kind of talk about it. Otherwise, thanks for my patrons who help support what I do here at the channel, and I will be back again forecasting wise on Wednesday for my patrons for their early weekend forecast, and Friday morning for everybody else. Until then, have a good week.